Hey, everybody, real quick, if you need a recap of Cobra Kai Season 1, 2, 3, or 4, I've got you covered. I'm going to put the Season 4 recap in the tab in the upper right-hand corner, but if you need the other seasons, just search on the page. I have all of them. Season 4 picks up in Mexico. Miguel gets there. He's wide-eyed. He's excited. He's looking for his father, Hector Salazar. But he's also lost. He's never been to Mexico before. He's got an address of where Hector might be, but that's it. He's approached by a couple of Good Samaritan surfers who want to help him out. They circle on the map exactly where he needs to go, and then they give it to him, but they want money for the map. And that makes sense to Miguel. But it turns out while they were distracting him with the map fiasco, they stole his bag. And they take all but $5 from Miguel and give him a welcome to Mexico. Miguel then walks to that address, and it's of a bar. He walks inside, he's looking around, and there's a card game going on in the back. Miguel goes to approach the guy who's clearly running the game, but he's stopped by security who tells him, hey, this section's closed. The boss is busy. The guy who is in charge, however, says, no, let him through. He doesn't recognize Miguel, which makes sense. Miguel's not from around there. And Miguel starts mentioning his name, his full name. Then he mentions that his mother is Carmen Diaz, but none of this makes any sense to the guy. He starts joking around about Miguel's mom sounding hot, which she is, so he was right on that front. But it doesn't take long for Miguel to just annoy this guy. And finally, he has to tell Miguel, look, man, I've never heard of your mother. I'm not the guy you're looking for. Now, if you don't get out of here, all of these guys are going to beat you up. So, leave. And Miguel was able to take out one of those guys who tried to put his hands on Miguel, but he doesn't want to get an entire bar fight. So, reluctantly, he walks out of the bar without any answers. He doesn't really have any more leads. But the good thing is his cell phone is suddenly working. He's got service. So he decides to call Sam. Sam is replaying the All Valley back, trying to figure out where she screwed up, trying to fix her moves. But she's shocked to hear from Miguel because no one's heard from him since he left the All Valley. Sam's pretty pissed off. She explains to Miguel, your mom is really worried. I mean, you left without telling anybody. And Miguel tries to explain that he really couldn't tell anybody because everybody would convince him not to go. She says, yeah, because it's extremely dangerous. She then says, are you not even going to ask what happened at the tournament? I mean, you knew what it meant for me to face Tori. And Miguel is so turned off by the fact that somehow Samantha is making this about her. They start getting in a fight about being in each other's corners. And when Miguel says there are just more important things than karate, Sam ends up hanging up on him. As he's standing in the road, though, he gets a stroke of luck because he overhears a conversation between two guys. And one of them yells, Hector, what are you doing? That's Rogelio's job. And when Miguel turns around, there's a pretty good-looking guy standing there. And he's definitely not this monster that his mom made him out to be. In fact, he explains to the guy, I'm doing this job because he just had a baby. He's really tired. I wanted to give him a break. So Miguel starts following this guy. He sees that he's got a wife, and he also sees that he has a little son named Luis, who's probably about 5. But as Miguel is tailing them, Luis's soccer ball goes in the road, and Luis goes after it, and he's almost hit by a car. But he's saved by Miguel. That's when Miguel gets his first introduction to his dad. It is Hector Salazar. Miguel, though, doesn't come right out and say, you're my dad. He just plays it off like, I'm Miguel, I'm from America. He doesn't want to drop that bombshell on him just yet. They invite Miguel to dinner, and at first he says, no, I can't. But Hector says, no, you have to. We owe you. And Hector does think something's up because he tells Miguel, I feel like we've met before. But Miguel tells him, no, we haven't. And Hector just shrugs it off and says, well, you know what? Maybe you're a stranger, but tonight, you're family. And the four head off to go have dinner together. But Miguel is not the only person in Mexico. From the show, I mean, there's a lot of people in Mexico, but Johnny and Robbie have tailed Miguel down there. Although, Johnny's the only one who knows that. Robbie's in the dark. Robbie thinks that him and his dad are just going on a father-son bonding trip. And when Robbie eventually gets out of Johnny that they're there for Miguel, he gets pretty pissed off. But Johnny explains he wants to fix their relationship, but when he heard Miguel was in trouble, he had to do something. He also couldn't just leave Robbie at home, so he had to get him to come with. Robbie then asks his dad, all right, what's the plan? And Johnny's plan sucks. He knows where Miguel's going to get off the bus. He knows Miguel's looking for Hector Salazar. If that doesn't work, he's going to check the Mexican phone book. Hearing this amazing plan has Robbie tell Johnny, coming with you is a mistake. And as Johnny's apologizing and explaining how he thought this trip would help not only mend their relationship, but mend Robbie and Miguel's relationship, he takes his eyes off the road and he ends up veering off into a ditch. Johnny gets out, starts trying to fix the car, and he finishes his apology. He tells Robbie, I know I haven't been there for you, but I also have failed Miguel too. Hell, I'm the reason he ran off in the first place. I'm out here trying to fix my mistakes so I don't have to live with regret. They're eventually able to put a donut on the car, get to the location of the bus stop, and Johnny starts giving Robbie some money for a bus ticket to get his way back home. He then apologizes one more time for dragging Robbie into this and then takes off to the beach because the guy who sells bus tickets thought he saw Miguel talking to a bunch of surfers. He approaches the guys, and the guys own up to having seen Miguel and even take out a map and circle on it where they sent Miguel to. But when they try to steal Johnny's wallet, that's when they realize they're dealing with an All-Valley champion. Johnny doesn't want to fight him, just like Miguel. But he has a different kind of disposition. He tells the guy, if you don't tell me where Miguel went, I'm going to shove that surfboard so far up your ass that your friends can use it to surf. But right before they kick this fight off, Johnny's almost blindsided, and that's when he's saved by Robbie. Because Robbie's not getting on that bus. The father-son combo take out all four of these surfer douchebags, and then they have to share a drink on the beach. Johnny tells Robbie this trip was a mistake from Jump Street. And Robbie says, no, it wasn't. I mean, we got some good stories out of it. And we have a lead. He pulls out the map from the surfer guy, and he says, hey, X marks the spot. So Robbie and Johnny are to continue to look for Miguel. But back at home, Daniel is a man of his word. He shuts the dojo down to the dismay of all of his students, but he does have a plan. He moves Chosen into the house, which doesn't really sit well with Amanda. Chosen has a tendency to walk around in the nude a little bit, letting that thang slang around. But Daniel couldn't let his friends stay at a hotel. He brought him over, though, because he needs help. Terry Silver is taking over the Valley. Ever since the All Valley, he's created commercials where he looks like a great guy who's opening up this epic franchise. Their signature location is going to be where Terry and Kreese jump Johnny. And when it comes time for the grand opening, Daniel and Chosen head over there and just watch from afar. It is packed. There are kids all over the place. And Daniel is worried that these kids are getting involved with somebody who is a charlatan. But as Daniel's watching all the kids, Chosen is watching Terry. Because Terry is showing off some karate that Chosen recognizes. It's from a guy named Kim Sun-young. And that's the name that Terry Silver gave Mr. Miyagi when he showed up at the dojo years ago to recruit Daniel. Daniel just figured it was a fake name, but Chosen says, oh no, this guy isn't fake at all. When they go back to the dojo at Daniel's house, Chosen shows him what he means. He explains that his family knew Kim Sun-young, and Chosen's family didn't exactly get along with him because his methods were aggressive. He didn't really fight with honor. Kim ended up teaching American soldiers, which is probably how Terry found it. But in order to take down Terry Silver, they need to infiltrate Cobra Kai. And the way they're going to do that is the next day, Chosen shows up at the dojo, applies for a job, and he's going to be one of the new senseis. In episode 2, Terry introduces the new senseis to all of the students, but he does state that not all of the senseis are going to be there. It's more of a job tryout. As he's explaining this, Tori walks in. She's late, but Terry excuses it because she is a champion, although she doesn't have her trophy with her. She's pretty conflicted about whether to bring it in or not, knowing what she knows regarding Terry Silver and the referee. When it comes time for the class to actually start and for the students to warm up with the new senseis, Chosen takes Tori aside. He starts pushing her to be better, saying that she doesn't want to train because she's now a champion, but more importantly, teaching her about honor. How no one can take it from you, but you can take it from yourself. Terry comes over and oversees this lesson, but Terry's not familiar with Chosen yet, and when he asks him his name, Chosen doesn't say his name's Chosen, he says his name is Joe. He's then pretty impressed about what he's able to get out of Tori. He pulls Chosen aside and starts asking him where he's from, and out of all of the new senseis, he seems to connect with Chosen the best, which is good for Chosen and Daniel's plan. After class, he even invites Chosen to his house for drinks because he wants to know how he ended up in the valley teaching karate. He gives Chosen his information and Chosen heads out. He then starts walking back onto the mat, but Tori stops him. She has to address the elephant in the room. Why he paid to make her champion. He doesn't totally own up to it, though. He says that he paid off the ref to make sure that Cobra Kai won, but Tori still won the fight. And at the end of the day, everybody in the valley knows that she's champion. She still doesn't really like what she's hearing, and he tries to explain that what he did was an act of survival. Cobra Kai survival. And if a person steals food to survive, is that really stealing in the end? But he also tells her, I want you to be here, but if you choose to leave, I'm not going to hold it against you. But if you come back tomorrow, I'll make you the future of this dojo. So Tori definitely has a lot to think about. Terry then heads home, and later that day, Chosen shows up. He did get a pep talk from Daniel about what to expect, telling him he's got to keep his guard up because Terry Silver is very conniving and very convincing. Eventually, Terry's going to figure them out, and when he does, Chosen has to be ready to fight. When Chosen gets to Terry's house, the first thing Terry does is pour them both some whiskey. They then start getting into how Chosen got into the valley. He tells Silver that he was planning on retiring until he saw the advertisement needing senseis. They start getting into who trained him, and then that morphs into rivalries. And Silver reveals that he also has a rival. It's Daniel LaRusso. After dinner, Terry then starts showing Chosen some of his old Japanese swords. But what really surprises Terry is the fact that Chosen tells him he doesn't even know if he wants the job. Terry's thought he's built this empire that everybody would want to be at, and now he's got a guy in front of him telling him, yeah, maybe not. Chosen asks Silver, what is your true ambition? And Terry tells him that he's already the largest dojo in the valley, but he's got bigger ambitions than that. He wants to send Cobra Kai's message all over the world. He's got a plan to make Cobra Kai and karate as synonymous as Starbucks and coffee. When Chosen asks him, what is this plan? Silver says, that's something I'm comfortable confiding in my right-hand man, if you will take the job. Chosen says yes, and then the two have a toast, where Chosen says a Japanese saying that Terry definitely recognizes. But the next day when he walks in, he runs into Tori, who is just leaving. She's decided to return to the dojo, but she was told by Silver that there's no class. Chosen is also surprised by this. He actually thinks he's early, but Terry says you're actually right on time. Then Terry gives a whistle, and Chosen is surrounded by the other senseis. Terry Silver was able to figure out who Chosen was, and the thing that he said during the toast was what gave it away. Chosen, pretending to be Joe, said that he was from Kyoto. But everybody that Silver's met from Kyoto says the same thing when toasting, and it's not what Chosen said. He started looking at his background and figured out who he was. Silver then instructs the senseis that anybody who takes Chosen out will get the job. But Chosen kicks all of their asses. Right before he leaves the dojo, he looks at Silver and says, now we draw a line. No more expansion. No more senseis. No more challenges to Miyagi-Do. And you won't come near the LaRusso family. If you cross that line, you will beg for mercy. And then he leaves. It's also pretty eventful down in Mexico. Miguel ended up staying the night at Hector's. And he finds out that Luis isn't actually Hector's child. Luis is his wife's child from a previous marriage. He starts telling Miguel how he almost had kids. He was married once early on, but then she left. This is a little bit of a depressing topic, so Hector changes it and says, you know what, Miguel, I'm going out later. You got to come with me. You got to leave Mexico with some kind of stories. And Miguel, who still hasn't told Hector that he's his child, says yes, because he just wants to spend some time with his dad. Right before they head out, though, Miguel calls his mom, saying, you lied to me. He doesn't even know I exist, and he's not this bad dude that you made him out to be. She tries to explain herself, but Hector walks in and interrupts the phone call, and Miguel hangs up and the two head out to the club. As they go out, Carmen, who is still worried sick, calls up Johnny. Despite his best efforts, Johnny doesn't really have any leads. But luckily, Carmen does have one. She explains to Johnny that Miguel is with his dad, and he doesn't understand what kind of danger he's actually in. Luckily, she overheard Hector say they were going to some place called El Hoyo Verde. So Robbie puts it in the GPS, and Johnny and Robbie head over there. And El Hoyo Verde is like a bar/nightclub/MMA arena. Right away as he walks in, Hector is greeted by one of the fighters. His name's Vicente, but he's actually Eric Anders from the UFC. Just had to point that out. Hector introduces the two. Turns out the guy that actually fights in the UFC is the headline fight that night. Who would have thought? Vicente then says he has to go off and get ready for the fight, and Hector tells him second round max. It's become obvious to Miguel that Hector is very well known at this place. Hector admits that, yeah, he made a lot of money back in the day, but not in the restaurant business. The kind of business where you make a lot of friends in high places, but you also make a lot of enemies too. But hey, that's the past, and that's behind him. They then grab some tequila and just start watching the fights. But not too long later, Hector gets word that these two Americans are looking for him. And they're pretty sure that the Americans are working for the FBI. That's because both Johnny and Robbie are wearing matching shirts that say FBI, but on the back of it, it says Female Body Inspector. If you're just looking at the two, though, it's blazoned FBI. The Female Body Inspector part's on the back, so they don't really know the difference. And when Hector gets word that the FBI might be looking for him in the club, he gets spooked. He thinks that it was Miguel. He thinks Miguel is a rat, and the person who he's talking to on the phone must be his contact. He doesn't believe Miguel when Miguel says, "I was talking to my mom." And he even takes Miguel's phone and starts looking through the call log, looking through the pictures. It turns out Miguel is a literal teenager from California. Hector apologizes, but then as he looks down across the octagon, there he sees Robbie and Johnny wearing the FBI stuff, and he tells Miguel, let's get out of here. Johnny and Robbie see Miguel leaving, and they go after him, but they're stopped by Vicente and his trainers. They get into a fight where Johnny has to fight dirty because MMA is mixed martial arts. Karate is literally one of those arts. So if this were legit, Vicente would kick the crap out of him. But Johnny ends up getting the best of him, and they're able to get out of there and continue to go after Miguel. Miguel, though, is with Hector, and they're in an empty storefront. Miguel seems a little spooked, and he tells Hector, "We should probably get you home." But he's surprised when Hector says, "No, I'm going to lay low a few days, maybe a week or two." When Miguel brings up his wife, Hector says she'll be fine. She's only with me for my money anyway. He then starts bashing women, and in particular, bashing Miguel's mom and his grandmother, not realizing who Miguel is. He finally sees what Carmen was talking about, that Hector's not a good guy. He decides to leave, and he never once tells Hector who he actually is. As soon as he steps outside, he calls his mom, and he starts crying and apologizing. But that's when he sees Robbie and Johnny pull up. He tells his mom, "I'm coming home." And he gives Johnny a big hug. He's not even mad when he sees Robbie. He's just happy to see some friendly faces. In episode 3, everybody is just happy to have Miguel back. His mother included, although she's still pissed off that he decided to just run off to Mexico without telling anybody. Johnny tells Carmen that the ride back was a little quiet, but he does think that things are healing with Miguel and Robbie. Just gotta take time. Later in the day, though, Carmen goes to Johnny because she thinks she's pregnant. The thing is, Johnny used protection, but Carmen has to explain to him those things aren't always effective. Johnny starts freaking out a little bit, starts panicking. He's excited, but he also knows that it's not a foregone conclusion he's going to be a dad again. They have to go get a test. They head to the pharmacy where it is very obvious what they're there for. As they're picking up the test, though, Carmen has to calm Johnny down a little bit. He explains to her that when Shannon was pregnant with Robbie, he just wasn't ready, and he doesn't want to be that guy again. And she completely understands, and she explains to him, "Johnny, now we have each other." They agree that they will take the test together. Well, Carmen will take the test, but Johnny will be there. But when he heads back to the apartment, he also realizes that he's got to change some things up. He heads to the Google machine, and he puts in how to baby-proof an apartment, how to swaddle, how to do all of that. And in a short amount of time, Johnny completely changes his apartment from a bachelor pad to a nice family atmosphere. It's pretty impressive. He then gets a knock at the door, and it's Miguel. Miguel needs some advice from a guy. Him and Sam are having issues. He hasn't seen her since he's gotten back from Mexico, and when he texted her, it was pretty short and abrupt. This was by design, though. She was getting advice from Moon and Yasmin. And in turn, Miguel is getting advice from Dimitri and Hawk, although it's not so much advice, it's more reaction to what text Miguel is getting. Like how bad it is the fact that he's not getting any emojis when he wants to talk to her. They do agree to talk later that day, but Miguel realizes he probably has to do a little damage control. He headed to the jewelry store, and he even found an octopus necklace that would be perfect for Sam because of their whole octopus thing, but it's pretty expensive. He ends up getting it anyway, though. But the fact is, he can't just rely on his friends for advice before he goes and has this big talk with Sam. He needs some guy advice from somebody with experience. And the only person he knows is Johnny. He explains to Johnny that he wants to fix things with Sam. He knows something's up. They have to meet that night, but he has no idea what he's actually supposed to say to her. And Johnny's advice is tell her the truth. We mess up sometimes. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just be honest with her. So Miguel leaves Johnny's apartment, and he goes and he heads and he has that conversation with Sam, and he is honest with her. He apologizes for what he did, and she says, "I'm sorry too. I was so wrapped up in the tournament, I wasn't sensitive to what you were going through. And I really respect what you did. You took a little bit of time to find yourself, but right now, I need that time to find myself. Ever since my dad opened up the dojo, my whole life has been about karate. So right now, I need a little break to figure out who I am outside of karate." Miguel doesn't quite understand what she needs a break from. Is it karate? Is it him? And she starts crying, and she says, "I'm not okay right now." And I don't think I will be until I take this time to find out about myself. But that doesn't mean we still can't be friends. Miguel understands and he gives her a hug, but he is hurt. This isn't exactly what he wanted. And as he's leaving, he just drops the octopus necklace on the ground. I guess the idiot didn't think of a gift receipt. Like, come on, man, you had to know this was a possibility. As Miguel was going through a breakup, Johnny gets a knock at the door from Carmen. She is very impressed by all the changes he made in his apartment. It's clear that Johnny is taking this seriously. So she feels really bad about the fact that she didn't hold true to her word. She took the test. And she's excited to tell Johnny Lawrence that they're having a baby. He's going to be the father of 2 kids now. But somebody who's already a father of 2 kids is Daniel LaRusso. He heads to the country club for a little R&R with Chosen and his 2 cousins, but they run into Silver. Daniel's very surprised to see Silver there and makes the comment of, I guess they'll let anybody join nowadays. But he feels like Silver has tracked him down and is intentionally antagonizing him. In turn, Daniel rubs it in a little bit by saying, by the way, how's your sensei search going? I hear you hit a little bit of a snag. Silver lets him know that doing that was a mistake. But Daniel tells him Miyagi-Do's never going to back down. Chosen then walks up and Silver tells both of them, Daniel, you might have some old friends to call upon, but you don't have as many as me. I'm giving you the opportunity to stand down. There won't be any retaliation, no repercussions, just get out of my way. But Daniel tells him, this is my backyard, and I'm not the one who needs to go. Silver kind of chuckles and then tells the bartender, put their drinks on my tab, and then he heads out. But the line that he said about having more friends than Daniel jumped out to Daniel. When Daniel and Chosen get back to the house, they start talking about it, and Chosen says, do you know any of Terry's old friends? And that's when Daniel remembers Mike Barnes. He fits the narrative of what Silver would be talking about. So Daniel and Chosen go track him down, and they follow him to a furniture store. Daniel heads inside to sneak up on Mike while Chosen waits in the car at Daniel's orders. He doesn't want him getting into any more fights. And as Daniel is hiding behind some boxes, he overhears a conversation with Mike on the phone where it seems like Mike is talking to Silver. He hears Mike say, it's good to be back in business, just like old times. Hey, I've been telling you to get rid of that Italian piece of crap for years. And then he says, I flew in from Japan. All of these things make sense. But when Daniel hears him say, for me to do my very best, I need 50%. It'll be just like last time. Those kids are in for a big surprise. Daniel takes action. He thinks that Mike is talking about his family. But boy, was he wrong. He takes Mike completely off guard and he grabs his cell phone, only to find out that Mike isn't talking to Terry Silver. He's talking to a customer. Because Mike Barnes has turned his life around and he owns a furniture store. He was talking to a customer about chairs. Daniel is super apologetic to Mike. But in a surprising twist, it's actually Mike who starts apologizing to Daniel. As he's gotten older, he realized what a bully he really was, and he felt terrible about it. He wanted to apologize for years, but he just never got the right opportunity. And he knows that Daniel's doing well. He sees the commercials. So he figured he didn't want to dig up regrets of the past. He starts telling him how he got into the furniture industry. After the All Valley tournament, he was a mess. He started working odd jobs, and then one day he was moving furniture, and he met his future father-in-law. His future father-in-law is in the business with Mike and his wife. Now, instead of getting satisfaction for using his hands for violence, he gets satisfaction with using his hands for creating something. Daniel then starts explaining to Mike why he's there, the whole Terry Silver situation. And Mike explains that he hasn't seen Terry Silver in years. They then start jokingly squaring off, talking about maybe doing a rematch. But Chosen runs in and attacks Mike. He figured that Daniel was taking too long and he couldn't wait. Mike starts defending himself, and all the while, Daniel is trying to get in between the two to break it up, but he's having problems. Eventually, though, he is able to stop them both and explain, we're on the same side. And Chosen feels really bad about that because not only did he beat up Mike a little bit, but he beat up all of his workers. As cooler heads prevail, though, they all sit down on a sofa and start talking a little bit more about this whole Terry Silver situation. Maybe getting beat up a little bit jarred something loose because Mike remembers that Terry Silver used to have this shady attorney. The guy was off the books, and as a matter of fact, he did a contract for Mike that detailed the terms of him terrorizing Daniel. Daniel gets really excited because if that contract still exists, that could be the item that takes Terry Silver down. Nobody in their right mind would let Terry Silver teach kids if he was drawing up contracts regarding bullying. But unfortunately, Mike tells Daniel, I don't have it, man. It's been years. He is, however, able to dig up the attorney's name, and he gives it to Daniel. He also makes a sale. Chosen ends up buying the couch. As Chosen is loading it in and giving directions, Daniel calls that attorney up and leaves a voicemail explaining who he is and how he has to discuss a former client named Terry Silver. The next day, though, Daniel heads to the country club and is hanging in the sauna when somebody walks in. Daniel tries to make small talk, but then he hears his own voice, and it's the recording he left on that attorney's voicemail. That's because the attorney, whoever he is, gave that voicemail to Terry Silver, and now Terry knows. He walks up to Daniel and says, "I told you not to play with fire." And then he walks out. And maybe what he meant by that was he burns Mike's furniture store down. He must have been able to figure out that Mike was the one who gave Daniel the name of the attorney. So he made him pay as well. In episode 4, Daniel finds out about what happened with Mike, and he's a little shook. Chosen brings up the fact that maybe this will push Mike to their side, but Daniel says, "Nah, I don't think he actually knows it was Silver. Plus, I heard he left town anyway during the insurance investigation." But the fact that Terry Silver went this far has Daniel concerned. He's got to put it on the back burner, though, because him and Amanda have a charity event to attend to. And this charity event is a big deal to Amanda. It's being hosted by a woman named Ava Garcia, who she has a little bit of a girl crush on. She's just a big fan of her organization. When they get to the house where the auction's being held at, Amanda compliments Ava on the fact that the house is gorgeous, but Ava says, "Actually, no, it's not my house. It belongs to one of our donors, actually. I think he's angling for a spot on the board." But that's when Daniel sees who the donor is, and he knows he's not angling for a spot on the board. He's angling for a spot inside Daniel LaRusso's head, because it's Terry Silver. Silver walks up to the LaRussos and takes them both by surprise. In front of Ava, all three of them put on a good face, but it's uncomfortable. Daniel pulls Terry aside and tells him, "You will not ruin this day for my wife." And Silver chuckles and tells him, "I have no intention of ruining this day for her. Let's just hope that nothing else ruins it for her." Now, Daniel's way more shook than Amanda. Amanda's feeling is, yeah, this guy's weird and he's clearly dangerous, but he's not going to do anything at a charity event. Daniel, though, feels like they're being lured into the lion's den. Even though he promised Amanda he would leave the karate stuff at home for the day, he's clearly not. She tells him that he needs to chill out, grab a drink, and most importantly, talk her up to Ava. But with Amanda alone, Terry walks up to her and explains, "I'm not against your husband." She says, "Well, he certainly thinks you are. He thinks that we were lured here so you could start the next phase of your karate plan." And Silver just laughs and says, "Well, that's understandable how I treated him in the past, but that is the past. That's not me anymore. I want to have a positive impact on kids. That's why I took over Cobra Kai. I wish Daniel would see that instead of sending his goon to rough up my potential hires." And this is the first that Amanda's hearing about this, so she gets pretty pissed off. She doesn't bring it up to Daniel, though, because the auction starts. And one of the things that's available for the auction is bonsai trees. But the winning bidder is Terry Silver at $30K. After winning the auction, he decides to grab the mic, and he wins over the entire crowd by saying that this kind of event is what Cobra Kai is all about. And as a joint initiative, he's going to offer free karate classes to all underprivileged kids. Later on in the auction, Daniel sees Terry talking to Ava, and he overhears the name Amanda. And that's the final straw. He walks over to Silver and demands to know what he was saying to Ava about his wife. And Silver gets real close to Daniel and says, "Well, I told her that she was a phony, a psychopathic liar, who should never be trusted." And when Silver points a finger at Daniel, Daniel pushes him out of the way, and Silver takes a dive, falling into the table with the bonsai trees where they crash to the ground and really just causing a scene. With everybody kind of staring at Daniel, he screams, "He's just trying to make me look bad, but he's the one attacking my family. He said all these disparaging things to Mrs. Garcia about my wife." But Ava looks at Daniel like he's crazy because, in reality, Terry just said glowing things about Amanda LaRusso. And now the LaRussos are outcasts at this charity event. Completely ruins the day for Amanda, just like Terry had planned. When they get home, Daniel and Amanda start yelling, Daniel defending his side and Amanda thinking that he's ridiculous. Eventually, Amanda says, "Daniel, enough is enough. This ends now." But when Daniel says this is exactly what he wanted, he manipulated us to get us to fight, Amanda thinks he's absolutely crazy. She can't believe that he won't stop. So she's going to excuse herself from the situation. She tells him, "I'm leaving, and I'm taking the kids with me. I need space." And the fact that Daniel just lost his family is the real gut punch of the day. Now, things aren't going that bad for Daniel's former rival, Johnny Lawrence, but things aren't going great either. He's realizing that a baby's going to cost a lot of money, and unfortunately, he doesn't really have a job right now. As he's trying to figure out what he can do to get money quick, he gets a knock at the door from Shannon. She's there to pick up Robbie's things because Robbie is going to her parents for the summer. But when Shannon walks in the apartment, she sees the changes, and it doesn't take long for her to realize that Carmen must be pregnant. They start talking about what he's going to do to make some cash, and she suggests that he ride for Uber, do DoorDash. It's easy, you work when you want to. So Johnny starts driving for Uber, delivering Uber Eats, but he sucks at it. He doesn't get the whole customer service angle of it. He also doesn't understand that you can't actually sample some of the food you're delivering. But one of his last deliveries of the day is to the pawn shop that he used to try to sell his junk at. When Johnny starts complaining about how bad the job is, the guy tells him, why don't you just quit? And that's when Johnny explains that he's got a kid on the way. So the owner of the pawn shop has to give Johnny a tough lesson in reality. Most people don't get to do their dream job. His dream was not to own 3 different pawn shops, but yet here he is. And he did it because he has a family to take care of. And when you think about the fact that all of this is for them, it makes working a crappy job worth it. Johnny really heard the message from the guy in the pawn shop, so as soon as he gets out of there, he calls up Shannon and says, I'd actually really like it if Robbie stayed with me this summer. He then apologizes for sucking in the past. So that was what was going on with the parents during the day. The kids, they all headed to the water park. Sam, Anthony, Yasmin, Moon, they're all hanging out on one side of the water park. But then it gets a little bit awkward because Hawk shows up with Miguel. And Moon completely forgot that she'd invited him. Now she feels really bad, but Sam assures her, it's fine. We're still friends. Even though Sam says all that, it is indeed awkward when Miguel shows up. On the other side of the water park, Robbie shows up, and it's the first time he's seeing Tori since he came back from Mexico. And unlike Sam, Tori was completely supportive of Robbie going away. But she's also thrilled to see him back. After they get the initial pleasantries out the way, Robbie pitches Tori on leaving Cobra Kai, but she tells him that if he wants to leave, that's on him, and that's fine, but she's staying at Cobra Kai. Now, things are working out because Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do have agreed to split up the water park. Just stay on your side. But that all changes when Kenny sees Anthony all alone. He still has revenge on his mind even after Anthony apologized at the All Valley. He, along with Kyler and a couple of other members of Cobra Kai, walk up on Anthony and surround him. And Anthony's attitude is, really, man? I apologized to you. I thought we were cool, but Kenny makes it known, no, we're not cool. They put a bunch of inner tubes around Anthony so he can't move, and then Kenny kicks him into the lazy river. It creates quite a scene, and it's a scene that Hawk ends up noticing, so he walks up on Kenny, and Hawk asks, what the hell are you guys doing? And out of all people to stand up to Hawk, who is the current reigning champ, it's Kenny, who got his ass beat by Robbie, and Hawk has no problem reminding him of that. This little argument gets even bigger when Tori jumps in, which causes Robbie to jump in. But Hawk doesn't want to fight him, not at the water park. He just tells them, you guys stay on your side, we'll stay on ours, and then they go their separate ways. But as the day continues on, a couple of the Miyagi-Do kids don't really feel like staying on their side of the park. There's rides on the Cobra Kai side that they want to try. So eventually they just get up and go ride them, but it doesn't go unnoticed by the Cobra Kai kids, and a little bit of a skirmish breaks out. One that gets them a warning from the workers of the water park that if they don't chill, they're going to get kicked out. It's pretty clear they have to find some resolution in this whole matter, so they agree to a race. Tori is going to represent Cobra Kai, while Hawk is going to represent Miyagi-Do. Kenny gives each their inner tube, and as he's walking back to the finish line, he runs into Robbie. Robbie still doesn't believe that the best place for Kenny is Cobra Kai. The first thing he does is tell Kenny, I'm quitting. I'm done with Cobra Kai. And I know you're only in Cobra Kai because of me, but it's not the right place for you. It's going to turn you into someone that you don't want to be. And I know because it happened to me. I didn't want to hurt you at the All Valley, but Kreese got in my head. And Terry Silver, he's way worse than Kreese. Kenny, though, disagrees with everything that Robbie's saying. And when Robbie tries to get closer to really hammer home his point, Kenny pushes him, telling him to back off. He tells Robbie, before Cobra Kai, I used to get picked on. But now I'm stronger than ever. And I'm never quitting because I'm not a quitter. And then he just walks away shaking his head. He then walks to the finish line where the race kicks off and Tori ends up winning. But she wins because Hawk's inner tube ends up deflating as it was going down the tunnel. And Hawk cries foul right away, saying Cobra Kai cheated. Kenny once again gets in Hawk's face. And Kenny lives up to the Cobra Kai motto by striking first, although he misses his first 3 attempts. As Hawk is defending himself from Kenny, Robbie sees what's going on. He pushes Hawk into the pool to defend Kenny. That causes Miguel to come over and get into Robbie's face because this whole day, Robbie's been trying to break it up, but to an outsider, it looks like he's on Cobra Kai's side. Nobody actually believes he's quitting Cobra Kai. At least no one in Miyagi-Do. All of this, though, ends up getting everybody kicked out of the water park. This is kind of a final straw for Robbie. When he gets out of the water park, Tori starts complaining about the fact that they got kicked out. And Robbie says, look, I know everything's going well for you, but by defending them, you're part of the problem. He gives her an ultimatum. Leave Cobra Kai or we can't be together. And she makes it clear she's not leaving Cobra Kai. He then gets run up on by Miguel because Miguel thinks he's on Cobra Kai's side. And even though Robbie once again says, I'm not a part of Cobra Kai, Miguel doesn't believe it, and he's really combative. It gets broken up, though, when Johnny shows up, and he tells them, I want you guys to get along. We're all friends now. But Robbie tells Johnny, no, we're not, and we never will be. In episode 5, Amanda heads to Ohio with the kids to get some R&R and just get away from Daniel and his karate mess. But she ends up linking up with one of her best friends from back home. And it just so happens that her best friend knows Daniel very well. It's Jessica Andrews. Jessica, ironically enough, introduced Daniel to Amanda back in the day. The two women head out to a bar. Amanda drags the kids with. And while the kids are distracted with old school video games, her and Jessica get caught up. Amanda vents to Jessica about the fact that it just seems like every time they're done with an old enemy of Daniel's past, another one pops up, and the latest being this Terry Silver guy. And Jessica is well aware of who Terry Silver is because she was in Daniel's life when Terry Silver first entered it. She knows how much of a bad dude Terry Silver really is. The headlines don't really do it justice. Silver did a number on Daniel back in the day. Jessica starts explaining what Terry Silver did to her and Daniel, and Amanda knew some of it, but she definitely didn't know the whole story. It does change her opinion a little bit. But while Jessica starts talking about the past, the two women get a blast from their past when a couple of old classmates walk up to them. And these girls are just bitchy. They start giving Amanda crap for being Babe Ruthless back in the day, bashing a couple cars with a baseball bat, and overall thinking that now she's better than them because she lives out in California. It actually starts a bar fight. And at one point, Amanda looks like she's about to get her ass kicked, and then Sam swoops in, does a flying kick, and saves the day. The group of 4 is able to escape the bar unscathed. When the group gets back to where Amanda is staying, Anthony is really impressed by what his sister did. He's really reconsidering karate, and she convinces him to give it another try. She realizes that maybe the methods of doing chores wasn't really Anthony's thing, but he really should know how to defend himself. And after what Kenny did to him, he's tending to agree. Amanda and Jessica, meanwhile, continue their conversation, with Jessica telling Amanda, Daniel has every reason to hate Terry Silver. I myself still have nightmares sometimes. So, cut him some slack. And Daniel is a mess back home. He's not sleeping, and overall, he looks like crap. But he realizes the quicker he gets rid of Terry Silver, the quicker he can get his family back. Chosen then notices something interesting in their mail. It's a newspaper clipping of the headline with Stingray accusing John Kreese of assault. But somebody wrote liar all over Stingray's picture and gave an address. The two head to the address, they camp out, and they see Stingray show up in Johnny's old Cobra Kai car. And Stingray shows up to a pretty nice house. All of this was gifted to Stingray by Terry as an appreciation for his, quote, sacrifice to the dojo. Stingray is now on Cobra Kai's payroll for getting his ass kicked. Daniel and Chosen knock on the door, and Stingray answers. And Daniel starts questioning him on why he would get a Cobra Kai car after what they did to him. But right away, Stingray starts defending Cobra Kai, saying it's completely changed ever since Sensei Silver took over. He then starts asking Stingray about how exactly he could afford this nice place. He basically tells him it's none of their business, and that's when Daniel tells him his theory. That Terry Silver paid him to lie about John Kreese so he could have Cobra Kai all to himself. The fact that that's dead-on accurate flusters Stingray a little bit, but he sticks with the game plan, saying, there's no way that's true. They start arguing about what kind of man Terry Silver is, and when Daniel says, Sensei Silver came after my family, Stingray tells him, well, then you must have done something really bad to deserve it. And that pisses off Daniel enough to kind of shove Stingray back, which breaks his PlayStation 4. That part sucked. But Daniel's aggression gets so bad that Chosen has to hold him back, reminding him that right now he's not being himself. Daniel realizes that Stingray's never going to help them. He's on the payroll. It's just not going to happen. But he realizes somebody who can might be Johnny Lawrence. And Johnny's had quite a day. He's been trying to get Miguel and Robbie to coexist. He took them to Olive Garden because, when you're here, you're family, but apparently they didn't get that memo. He then tried to create an escape room for them in his apartment, but that also didn't work. Nothing that Johnny tries seems to be working on getting these two to be friends. So when Daniel gets to Johnny's place, Johnny's cleaning up a lot of the escape room mess. Daniel tells Johnny his theory about Stingray and Terry paying him off. He tells Johnny that he might be able to get Stingray to flip. After all, Stingray joined his dojo. But Johnny says to Daniel, I kind of washed my hands of that whole Cobra Kai thing after the tournament. I got Robbie out of there and Kreese in jail, so that's 2 wins for me. Daniel gets so angry, he starts yelling at Johnny, calling him a pussy. And Johnny just looks at him and says, what are you doing, man? You show up out of the blue, you're ranting like a lunatic, you reek of booze, and now you want to fight me because I don't want to get pulled back into this rivalry with Terry Silver? What's up with you, man? Daniel realizes he is being ridiculous. He sits down and fills Johnny in on everything that's going on with him lately. Johnny tells him, I'm sure you and Amanda have your hiccups, but I'm also sure that you get over them. This one's going to be no different. Daniel then asks what's going on with the apartment because he finally notices all of the escape room stuff, and Johnny fills him in on the fact that Robbie moved in and him and Miguel are at each other's throats again. He was trying some conflict resolution, but it wasn't working. And Daniel says, I'm sure you'll figure it out, whether it be with this new approach or the old school Johnny Lawrence. When Johnny asks, I thought you didn't like the old school Johnny Lawrence. Daniel says, he's starting to grow on me. And if you tell anybody I said that, we'll really fight, and it won't be tournament rules. He then jokes that maybe that's what they needed back in the day. Not a fight to 3 points, but just a fight to end it. But after Daniel leaves, that throwaway comment gives Johnny a really good idea. What he's doing with Robbie and Miguel, it isn't working. So he calls them both outside in the courtyard, and he tells them, fight it out. No tournament rules, no mats, just fight until someone's done. Get it out of your system. So the two start swinging haymakers. But suddenly it leads up to the second floor of the apartment building. And that's when Johnny starts getting concerned. He doesn't want a repeat of what happened to Miguel in the school. But right before that repeat does happen, with Miguel having Robbie dead to rights with the ability to institute some payback, Miguel stops, showing Robbie some mercy. The two kids then have a conversation about their last fight, this fight, their differences. And at the end of it, they seem to be in a good space. And by the time Johnny catches up to him, he sees that they're no longer at each other's throats, and he says, oh, thank God. Because if you two were at each other's throats when the baby gets here, but then he stops, and he realizes that he wasn't supposed to say that. Him and Carmen had planned on telling the boys together, but he just let the cat out of the bag. And when the boys realize that they're both going to be brothers, they are pumped. To celebrate, Johnny ends up ordering Olive Garden to go. Because you can take that family atmosphere and you can bring it to your own house. When Carmen gets home, she's a little surprised to see Robbie there, but she's also really relieved. She, along with Johnny, enjoys seeing the boys getting along. Daniel, meanwhile, realized that he had to right a wrong. He buys a PlayStation 4 and heads back to Stingray's apartment. He walks in looking to give it to Stingray, but he doesn't find Stingray. Instead, he finds Terry Silver. Stingray ran right back to Cobra Kai and ratted Daniel out, telling Silver what Daniel did to him in the apartment. So Silver showed up at the apartment waiting for Daniel to arrive. Not quite sure how he knew he was going to arrive, but once Daniel does and he sees Silver, he concedes the valley, saying, you can have it. And Silver laughs and says, you think I want the valley? You always thought small. I don't want just the valley. I have much bigger plans than that. Daniel tells him he'll leave me out of it, and he tries to get out of there, but Silver stops him, poking the bear and rubbing it in Daniel's face that he was so easily able to manipulate his marriage. Daniel doesn't do anything but stand there, until Silver says, imagine how easy it's going to be to wrap Cobra Kai gis around your kids, and that's when Daniel pushes him. But that's a mistake, because Terry Silver kicks the crap out of Daniel, really doing a number on him. Luckily for Daniel, when he does get home and he's recuperating, Amanda has a ride back at home at this point, so her and the kids are able to take care of him. But Amanda does see what Jessica was talking about in terms of how dangerous Terry Silver is. But we also get the answer on who sent Daniel the original news article with liar written on it. It was Tori. But Tori didn't act alone. She sent that article at the behest of John Kreese, who was having Tori stay at Cobra Kai as a rogue agent. Tori doesn't want anything to do with Cobra Kai. She wants out. But Kreese has convinced her to stay a little bit longer and do his bidding until he's able to get free and reclaim the dojo. In episode 6, Terry Silver's reign on the Valley continues. He still needs a number 2 in command, so he calls up a former friend, Sensei Kim Na-young, who is a relative of his trainer, Kim Sun-young. She flies in along with 5 of her senseis, and they're going to take over the training at Cobra Kai. In return, she's getting 50% and a partnership with Terry, with the idea of bringing her family's teachings to the States. After Kim gets settled, they head to a place called Topanga Karate. Terry has been scooping up dojos left and right, acquiring everyone that he can find. But Topanga Karate has an interesting student. It's Devin Lee. After Miyagi-Do closed, she still wanted to continue karate. She didn't want to do it at Cobra Kai, so she joined Topanga Karate. And now Topanga is becoming Cobra Kai. Terry walks in with Tori. Tori is staying at Cobra Kai at the urging of John Kreese. She desperately wants to leave, but Kreese assures her that he has a plan. She just has to stay there a little bit longer. But when she walks into Topanga Karate, Devin isn't too thrilled to see her because Tori was the one who defeated her. Devin, however, is not about to quit karate, so she's just going to have to go along with the lesson. And Sensei Kim, along with her other senseis, start trying to figure out what they have in Topanga. While Terry was taking over yet another dojo, Chosen, Amanda, and even Johnny get together and discuss what they plan to do about Terry Silver's attack on Daniel. As they're doing so, though, Daniel comes out of the suit, tells the group, LaRusso Auto still has to go on, and I still have to sell cars, so I'm going into work. They tell him that's not a good idea and that they really need to formulate a plan, but he says, guys, I'm done with karate. If he wants to have the Valley, he can have it. They start giving him a speech on not giving up, but he says, guys, I am giving up. Going toe-to-toe with Silver was a mistake. I'm done. I became a sensei to help kids, and now I've just made everybody's life worse. Johnny thinks he's crazy and shoots back, you have helped kids. But Daniel tells him, no, I haven't. I'll make a list of how I made the situation worse. Why don't you go ask Robbie how much I've helped them? Then he just goes to work. Amanda, Chosen, and Johnny continue to figure out what they're going to do about the situation. Even after Daniel left for work, they weren't about to quit. And when Chosen mentions how Silver's empire keeps growing every day, that's when Sam notices that he's at Topanga Karate, so she mentions, well, he's taking over other dojos now. And when Johnny finds out that Terry Silver is currently at Topanga Karate, or at least he thinks he is, he heads there. He vows to kick his ass, and Chosen isn't going to let him go alone, so Chosen goes with him as well. But when they get to Topanga and Johnny looks inside, he is mortified to see Devin there. That's his former student. Now she's learning under Terry Silver. It's Chosen who has to be the one to say, Johnny, we're not here for a student, we're here for Terry Silver. Johnny asks, all right, then what's the next move? And Chosen says, we need to wait. Inside, Sensei Kim splits the group up and Devin is put with Tori. Devin doesn't really want to learn from Tori, but she doesn't have a choice. Tori starts trying to show her some stuff, but their relationship's still combative. It starts to get smoothed over, though, once Devin starts talking about her mom. Her mom recently died of cancer, and with what Tori is going through with her mom, she can kind of relate a little bit. Sensei Kim then breaks them up and has them do a new lesson. She puts a stick on a table and says, grab the stick. The other person is charged with making sure their opponent doesn't grab that stick. At first, Tori takes it kind of easy on Devin, and Devin's easily able to grab the stick. But Sensei Kim pushes Tori, showing her the, quote, way of the fist. And Tori doesn't take it easy on Devin. She really goes hard after her, and when it's all said and done, Devin runs out of the dojo in pain, shock, embarrassment, maybe all three. Once the class is finally finished, that's when Johnny and Chosen head in. They demand to know where Terry Silver is, but the sensei who's in there doesn't give up Silver's location. Johnny and Chosen then start going after this guy, but he's really good. And Johnny and Chosen get the best of him, but it wasn't easy. That's when Sensei Kim comes out with all 5 of her senseis. She's heard plenty about Johnny Lawrence and Chosen. Chosen, though, knows that if they fight in this dojo, 6 against 2, it's going to be a losing effort. So they head out. The next day at the flagship location, as Cobra Kai is getting ready for that day's practice, Devin walks in. Tori's pretty upset. She doesn't want anyone else joining Cobra Kai. And when Tori questions her on what she's doing there, Devin just takes it as Tori's being worried about a little competition. Tori tries to get her kicked out by telling Silver she ran away. She's not Cobra Kai material. But Sensei Kim tells her the test wasn't for her. That test was for you. On the other side of the valley, Johnny, Chosen, Amanda, even Sam are still discussing what they're going to do. Every plan they've had hasn't worked so far. And Amanda says, guys, we got to be real. If we're going to formulate an attack, we need Daniel to lead it. The problem is, Daniel's quick karate. But Sam tells the group, I thought I was done too. But I was wrong. So they just have to get Daniel back in the game. Amanda drives him over to Miyagi-Do and starts showing him some of the artifacts that they have about Mr. Miyagi. The bonsai trees, paint the house. Amanda tells him a story about Mr. Miyagi, and then Robbie shows up and tells him that he did in fact help him. But in order to get Daniel back, they're going to need a lot more than Robbie. They take Daniel outside, and there are all of his old students, ready to learn. Daniel looks at Johnny. Johnny gives him a nod, and Daniel is back. But their old enemy, John Kreese, is trying like hell to get out of prison. He's been smooth-talking his therapist, hoping that she's going to give him a letter of recommendation on early release. But it doesn't work. She denies it. He continues to have to go to these therapy lessons, and he does at one point have a little bit of a breakthrough, as suddenly his therapist is turning into all of these older people from his life, which, by the way, includes Terry Silver. But John Kreese is going to have to stay in prison longer than he expected. And John has been getting picked on by the other inmates. His age makes him a target, so he has to set him straight. One day, one of them walks up to him in his cell and starts trying to bully him, and John shows him why his name is Sensei, beating the crap out of him, and now he's at least got the respect of everybody in the prison. In episode 7, Daniel's back in the game. He's motivated, but he's got to work quickly. Terry Silver is expanding Cobra Kai's at a rapid rate. If they don't act quick, every kid in the valley is going to be wearing Cobra Kai gear. They know that they need to figure out what he's up to, because it's pretty clear that the valley isn't going to satisfy him. The problem is, they have no idea. And they've pretty much exhausted all of Terry Silver's friends. And Amanda brings up the elephant in the room, John Kreese. If anybody would know what Terry Silver was up to, it might be John Kreese. At first, Johnny and Daniel don't want to admit it, but she's right. They're going to have to go visit John and see what he knows. So they head off while Chosen handles the lesson that day. And all the Miyagi-Do kids are back. That includes Robbie. Hawk can't stand him. Dimitri's shocked to see him. And Miguel has to tell them both, all right, chill out. He's on our side now. Miguel is more concerned about Sam. He still has a huge thing for her. And even though they're supposed to still be friends, you can tell he wants to be more than just friends. But joining Sam at that lesson is going to be her brother Anthony. This is really the first karate lesson that he's had since he paid somebody to wax the cars. But the lesson starts out a little unconventional. Chosen hands each kid an egg and says, protect the egg. And they all split up. They have a little downtime before Chosen comes and tries to find them, and Miguel looks over and sees Robbie joking with Sam. Hawk tries to make a thing of it, saying that he's trying to move in on Sam, but Miguel once again tells him, nah, me and Robbie are cool now. They're probably just catching up. But then they hear the whistle from Chosen. He's coming. And one by one, he starts picking the group off, destroying eggs like it's nothing. Every time a kid gets their egg destroyed, they have to go back to the deck and stand there. When Hawk gets his egg destroyed, he walks up to the deck and Robbie says, how did he find you? And Hawk just looks at him and says, shut up and don't talk to me. Robbie apologizes for what happened to Eli's mohawk, but he tells him, if anybody knows what Cobra Kai can do to a person and turn him into an asshole, it's you. Eli asks him, wait, so I'm the asshole? And Robbie goes down the list of reasons why Eli, in the past, has indeed been an asshole. Finally, Dimitri gets between them and says, all right, guys, enough. We're on the same side now, and we have bigger fish to fry. You're both ex-assholes. There's a madman out there using weapons on us. And it's true. Chosen's still out there, hunting down the last couple of eggs, and finally he finds them. He then hands the kids new eggs. They're going to need a new plan. And that's when Anthony comes up with the idea of sticking together, not splitting up when he tells them to go. So they do that. They put all of their eggs in one basket, which usually is frowned upon, and they surround the basket. Chosen tries to bust his way in, but with that many kids, he's unable to. And finally, he concedes defeat, and the group celebrates their victory, thanks to Anthony. But that was not the only lesson going on about teamwork that day in the Valley. Over at Cobra Kai, the kids all arrive at the flagship dojo and they start practicing. And they're going really hard. Devin's noticed lately that they're pushing them really hard, and she mentions it to Tori, but Tori reminds her that she shouldn't be at Cobra Kai. The place is dangerous. And Devin once again feels like Tori just doesn't want competition, but it's not that. A couple of spots away, Kenny is going hard. But Kyler doesn't like that. He thinks Kenny's making them all look bad, and he tells Kenny he's got to slow down while also reminding him that he's number one now. If Kenny plays his cards right, maybe he can be number two. Kim and Silver are watching them practice on their surveillance camera footage. They realize they need to find a leader in the group. So that day's lesson, they have them both split up and go after one of the senseis. It's 2 versus 1. Kenny and Kyler get up, and they're going to go after... They're up against a sensei who, in reality, is former UFC champion Tyron Woodley. I don't think the kids know that, but it's a really tough test, and it's one they fail. Kyler keeps sending Kenny in there to get his ass kicked, not really doing much. It's such an embarrassing effort that Silver pulls them off the mats. Now it's the girls' turn. Tori and Devin are going to go after Kim. And while Tori wants to work as a team, Devin doesn't. They also end up failing pretty miserably. Kyler and Kenny get up and try again, and once again, Kyler's just sending Kenny in there to get beat up. And finally, Kenny gets tired of it, and he walks out. Silver, though, follows him. He tells him that he's pretty much been a follower most of his life, but now it's time to be a leader. Because he feels like Kenny has more potential than anyone who's ever come through the dojo. But that is if he's ready to be a leader. So Kenny goes out there and leads. When he tells Kyler, though, he's taking the reins, Kyler doesn't take it well. So Kenny fakes a fight with him. In reality, Kenny could have kicked Kyler's ass because Kyler's not very good at karate. But it's real enough to everybody but Kenny. And when Tyron tries to step in, Kenny throws Kyler in his way, using it as a distraction and kicking Tyron in the face. He's the only person to successfully get a point that day. Kim then asks the girls who wants to go next. And Tori is very surprised that Devin wants to go. Tori tells her, if we do this, you got to listen to me. And Devin says, that's all I've been trying to do since I got here. So they get up, and they do work as a team. It's going better than the first time, but they're still getting beat up quite a bit. At one point, though, there is an opening for Tori to win. But she would have to sacrifice Devin to do so, and she doesn't do that. It results in them losing, and Kim criticizing Tori for not taking that opening. But as Tori tells Devin later, I wouldn't have been a very good leader if I had done that. So the lessons that day are about teamwork, and that's what Daniel and Johnny did. They worked as a team, going to the prison and visiting with John Kreese, who did not want to visit with them. They thought maybe prison would have humbled Kreese a bit, but they quickly find out that's not the case when prisoners are walking up to him asking him if he wants anything from the vending machine. He sits down and tells them, I know exactly what Terry Silver's planning, but if you think I'm going to help you, then you're fooling yourself. Daniel looks at him and says, if you know what Terry's planning, then why don't you just tell us so we can stop it? But Kreese says, as if you could. You've already failed. And that was after I gave you the lead. And that's when Daniel realizes it was Kreese who sent the newspaper clipping. Daniel then says, what if I can help get you out of here? I have a really good lawyer. And Kreese says, well, if that is true, then I'd be willing to tell you what I know. So Daniel walks off, makes a phone call, comes back and says, all right, my lawyer's willing to talk. But I'm not giving you his number until I get the full story on what Terry's up to. So Kreese agrees. He tells him that way back in the day, Terry, who had become a very successful businessman at this point, paid for him and Kreese to go back east to learn the way of the fist from where it was created. He wanted to learn from Kim Sun-young. But during that trip, Terry pitched John on something. John had just opened up Cobra Kai. But Silver tells him you can do better than the All Valley. He pulls out a flyer for something called the Sekai Taikai. It's the top karate tournament in the world, but barely anybody in the States has heard of it. With the resources that Terry had back then, he wanted to make it the Super Bowl of karate, but Kreese wasn't interested. He just wanted to focus on Cobra Kai. Silver reminds him that if they win this huge tournament, the Cobra Kai way will be the way. But at that time, John just felt like they weren't ready. So that is what Silver's up to. He doesn't care about the All Valley anymore. He's going global. Kreese then asks Daniel for the lawyer's number, but instead of a phone number on the piece of paper, it just says no mercy. Daniel never once considered helping out John Kreese. Kreese got played, and he's not going anywhere. In episode 8, representatives from the Sekai Taikai show up at Cobra Kai. They're not going to guarantee Cobra Kai admission to the tournament, but they're there to watch. Silver tells the group that what sets him apart is the fact that he can help them out with corporate sponsorships, because the reality is nobody knows about this tournament in the States, but they could with Silver's help. They tell him that that's fine, and they do appreciate it, but this review will be just about the karate. And when Silver says, well, that's no problem, our dojo's the best in the valley, Daniel, Chosen, Johnny, and Amanda walk in and say that's not true. They immediately dispute Silver's claim and say that their dojo is much better, even though it doesn't have a name. This turns into a giant pissing contest between Daniel and his group and Terry and his group. They just start going over their resumes until finally the representatives agree to just look at both dojos. And the person that seems to be most upset about the fact that Daniel's group is getting a look isn't Silver, it's actually Kim. She came all that way because Silver promised her that her family's teachings would finally emerge from the shadows. But now his petty rivalry is getting in the way of that. Silver reassures her that it's not going to be an issue. Daniel and his group are just desperate. And she says, well, then we must suffocate them. It does seem like, though, Cobra Kai is sweating it a bit. Over at Miyagi-Do, Daniel and Johnny come back to tell his students that they're going to be evaluated. And they're excited. Over at Miyagi-Do, spirits are high. And when the representatives stop by, they see the unconventional tactics that they use in training. This is like a bare bones operation, and one that results in a lot of watermelon on the main representative's suit, because Sam kicks the crap out of one and it sprays everywhere. Johnny's pretty worried that this guy's going to be upset, but it turns out not at all. His favorite movie's Rocky IV, and the unconventional training that Miyagi-Do is doing reminds him of the unconventional training that Rocky did in that movie to defeat Drago. But he's also impressed with Cobra Kai's training and the high tech that they have. He doesn't know which dojo to pick. They're so different, but yet they're so worthy. So in order to determine who gets into the Saikai Taikai, he wants to see how their students fare in direct competition. Each dojo is going to select 2 fighters, a boy and a girl. It'll be just like the All Valley, and after those fights, the organizers will decide which dojo gets into the competition. For Cobra Kai, the choices are pretty clear. Kenny's going to represent Cobra Kai for the boys and Tori for the girls. But Tori doesn't know what to do. She's still a mole in Cobra Kai. She doesn't want to compete for them. So after class, she goes and asks John Kreese what he thinks, and he tells her, do what's right for you. The plan's off. She gets pretty pissed off. She's been helping him this whole time, thinking that the plan was to stop Silver and get him out of here. And now he's telling her that that's no longer the plan, and he's not giving her any insight as to why. So Tori ends up storming out of there, not knowing what to do. Kenny, meanwhile, gets a pep talk that night from Silver. He tells him that this is his time. And then Silver shows him a strike that he dubbed the Silver Bullet. If used correctly, the Silver Bullet will render the opposition immobilized. It completely takes the wind out of them. And if you can't breathe, can't fight. Even Kenny questions the method of this. You already get a point for hitting someone in the chest. Why render more damage? But Silver reminds him the quickest way to victory is to take out your opponent with one blow. Over on the Miyagi-Do side, the choice isn't as clear as Cobra Kai. Miyagi-Do has 3 possible choices: Robbie, Miguel, and Hawk. But they all agree to let Hawk fight because he's the most recent All-Valley champion. The girl, meanwhile, that is clear. It's Sam. So the matchup is going to be Hawk versus Kenny and Tori versus Sam. The fight will be at Cobra Kai, and the judge will be one from the All-Valley. One that Terry Silver knows all too well. The first fight is going to be Kenny versus Hawk. But before they square off, Kenny looks across the dojo and notices that Robbie is now training Anthony, and he feels betrayed. He yells across the dojo for Robbie and walks up to him and says, that's really messed up. You're training the kid who bullied me? And Robbie says, I heard you're the bully now. He then starts once again trying to pitch Kenny that Cobra Kai is not the place. It's just going to build up hate in him. But Kenny isn't ready to let that hate for Anthony go. Kenny yells at Robbie, that kid is the reason I came to you in the first place. You know what? You're lucky you're not on the mat today. And then Kenny walks off. The competition then starts, and Kenny gets the first point. And it seems like Hawk gets the second, but the referee says Hawk was out of bounds when he clearly wasn't. It's becoming a repeat of the All Valley, with this ref doing a little home cooking. And it's something that Tori notices, she doesn't approve of, and as the fight is continuing, she sneaks off and leaves. Kenny then does a completely illegal blow that probably should have gotten him kicked out of the competition. And when Eli eventually gets up, that's when Kenny unleashes the Silver Bullet. It works. The wind is knocked out of Eli, and the ref is really quick to count him out. Kenny ends up winning. Now Cobra Kai is just one win away from clinching this thing, but they look around for their female, and they can't find her because she's gone. They have to go with the second best option, which is Devin. And just like in the first fight, Sam looks like she scores a point, but the ref says, no, you didn't. And she gets thrown off her game that Devin scores the first point of the match. Because of the ref, Sam's no longer in the game, and Chosen, Daniel, and Miguel have to remind her that she is the better fighter. She goes out there and she makes it clear because she's landing points on Devin that even the ref, who is being paid, can't argue with. When it's all said and done, he has to say that Sam won. With each dojo tied 1-1, now it's just a matter of who the panel thinks deserves to go to the Sekai Taikai. After convening, they agree that the dojo that will be going is Cobra Kai. But they also agree that Miyagi-Do deserves to go as well. The only problem is Miyagi-Do isn't the official name of the dojo, and they're going to need to figure that out. They do have time for that, though. They don't have to decide right then and there. Daniel then walks over to his group and says, we have a lot of work to do in the future, but tonight, I want you to celebrate. And the kids do. They throw a house party that's going great for everybody. I mean, drinks are flowing, and it looks like every cup is filled with Pepsi or Coke, one of the two. But Sam is someone who shows up a little late, and she has something in her hand. It's the octopus necklace. She was leaving Miyagi-Do one day, she saw it, and she knows who dropped it. By the look on her face, she's ready to get back to Miguel. Until she walks in the house party and sees he's making out with somebody else. She wasn't prepared for that. She runs out of there. And Miguel, who noticed that she was looking at him, runs after her. But as she's outside trying to call an Uber, crying, she hears someone from behind her say, LaRusso. And when she turns around, she's shocked because it's Tori. Tori tells her, I'm not here to fight. I came to talk. Because the truth is, you didn't lose the All Valley. Episode 9 picks up right where Episode 8 left off. But even though Tori wanted to talk, when she finally comes clean about cheating at the All Valley, Sam doesn't take it well. They get into an all-out brawl that attracts a pretty big crowd, including Miguel and Robbie. They break it up pretty quickly, and that's when Sam says, she's been lying the whole time. She's been working with Kreese, which is something that Robbie didn't know. Everybody's kind of taken back by this, and Tori just says, you know what, screw this. I knew this was a mistake, and she goes home. The next day, Miyagi-Do knows that they have to do something about this situation. They can't go to Daniel or Johnny. The last time Daniel tried to confront Terry Silver, he got his ass kicked. And Bert says, well, I'm still friends with Stingray. Maybe he'll be honest with me. I can go talk to him. But one person who is absent from this meeting is Robbie, because he headed to Cobra Kai. He walks in, and Silver's happy to see him, and he right away apologizes to the group, saying, I let you guys down. But what he really apologizes for isn't abandoning them at the All Valley. It's not taking them with him. He starts a very anti-Cobra Kai speech, and yet nobody comes with him. Silver makes it clear that his students follow his orders, and the next time anyone from Miyagi-Do steps foot in a Cobra Kai, they're getting their ass beat. Robbie then walks out, and class continues. But at the end of class, Silver and Kim want to talk to Tori alone. When they asked Tori what reason she had for not showing up to fight, she gave them an excuse that Kim right away knew was a lie. So they set up a dummy that is completely made of stone. They surround Tori, and they all but force her to attack this thing. Even after she says, I'm going to break my hand, they don't care. Terry Silver has done a step up from the wooden dummy that he used to use with Daniel, and now he has the students attacking full-on stone blocks. And Tori was right. She starts attacking it, and she's injuring her hand pretty good. But she also knows that she can't leave until she does it. Kim, in order to motivate her, says, this is all about that boy Robbie, isn't it? Your own feelings getting in the way of your dojo. But Tori screams, I broke up with that boy for this dojo, you bitch. And she slams her fist through that stone. As she's writhing on the ground in pain, Silver tells her, well, let's hope you keep making decisions for this dojo. Now, at the same time, the Miyagi-Do kids have been able to locate Stingray, and he's having a Dungeons & Dragons game with his buddies. He's excited to see Bert until he sees who Bert's with. He feels completely betrayed by this. He tries to tell him, just read the transcript, that's the truth, but they know that that's not the case. I mean, his face is as guilty gets. They sit Stingray down, and he tells them, if I explain what really happened, Silver's going to find out, and I can't lose all this. For me, this situation just isn't that easy. But then he finds a way around it. He explains to the kids what happened to him through a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. I mean, he makes the whole thing up, but the kids get the gist of the fact that Terry Silver beat the crap out of him, framed Kreese, and is now paying him off. Sam is so upset that she storms out and Miguel goes after her. He starts apologizing for all of this happening, but the main thing he apologizes for is hooking up with that girl the previous night. And she tells him, "You have nothing to apologize for, we broke up." And he's just really confused about the mixed signals she's sending. "I'm done with karate, but now I'm joining a world karate tournament. We're breaking up, but I'm upset when I see you with somebody else." She tells him that this summer she just wanted everything to go back to normal, but everything was based on a lie. If she knew the tournament was rigged, maybe this trickle-down effect wouldn't have happened. She tells Miguel, this is all Tori's fault. And Miguel tells her, "Look, I know you hate Tori, and you have plenty of reasons to, but you have no idea what it's like to be in Cobra Kai. I do, and I know that it must have been so hard for her to admit what she did. She should have said it sooner, no doubt, but the fact is she admitted it. And now it's up to you to decide what to do about it." Sam thinks about it, and she heads over to Tori's place. Tori answers the door, but Sam makes it clear, "I'm not here to fight." And then Sam notices that her hand is really banged up. Tori lets her in the house, and Sam starts looking around and sees what a bad environment Tori is really living in. All of a sudden, she starts feeling bad for her. Tori tells Sam, "When they handed me that trophy, that was the best moment of my life. But then I saw Silver in that ref, and it made me feel like a fraud. I wanted to get back at Silver so bad, and that's why I listened to Kreese. But then I just got caught up in more lies, and now my life's a living hell." Sam looks at her and says, "I didn't know what you were going through, but now that I do, maybe we can help each other." She explains the conversation with Stingray, but the problem is Stingray is still afraid to go to the police. And Tori says, "I knew Silver was involved, but I didn't know he did it with his own hands." When Sam tells her the problem is we can't prove any of this, Tori realizes that if it happened in the old dojo, maybe they can. So that's what's going on with the kids. Johnny and Carmen had a doctor's appointment. Baby's looking healthy, but as they're leaving, they ended up running into Terry Silver. They have a very awkward, intense conversation in an elevator. Nothing really happens after that, but Johnny heads to LaRusso Auto and tells that group exactly what went down. And Daniel reminds him that Terry Silver is not going to risk getting kicked out of this big tournament. They could probably breathe easy for the moment. Amanda points out that everybody could probably use just a night of fun. But when she mentions sharing a bottle of tequila with Carmen, and Johnny points out that in her state it's not a good idea, they quickly figure out that Johnny's going to be a dad, and now they have to celebrate. Louis begs to plan the whole thing, and that night he orders a limo, he heads to a club that he's familiar with, he schmoozes the bouncer, and everybody just goes in to have a good time. Even Carmen, who's just drinking water. The alcohol starts flowing. Chosen and Johnny start talking about how they all wanted to kill Daniel at one time, but they wouldn't change a thing because of how it turned out. Chosen and Johnny especially are getting along great, and when Johnny goes up to the bar, he tells Daniel, Chosen's a great guy. But Daniel says, "I just feel bad he doesn't have a date." And Johnny says, "What about that Kumiko chick?" Because Chosen was confiding in Johnny that he has a big thing for Kumiko. So Daniel has to address this with Chosen. Daniel tells him, "I had no idea you had feelings for her." And Chosen tells him that after the disgrace that happened to him in his village, he tried to hide, but it was Kumiko who brought him out of that darkness. He's just never told her how he felt. So Daniel urges him to go tell her how you feel. And Chosen has a very awkward phone call with Kumiko, or at least her voicemail, where he says how much he wishes that she was with him at that moment. For the most part, though, this night's going great. Until Louis sees in the club that Anush is there with Vanessa. And he doesn't take it too well that the guy that he works with is dating his sister. He starts an all-out brawl that gets him kicked out of that club. The boys want to continue the night of fun. I mean, most of them are completely drunk. Carmen and Amanda, though, they want to head in. So they split up, with the girls calling an Uber and the guys getting back in the limo. As the guys take off, Louis and Anush end up making up outside of the club, but then they ask where the limo went. And the weird thing is the driver of the limo is also standing there with them. That's because somebody hijacked the limo. And who's ever in that limo is taking Chosen, Johnny, and Daniel for a ride. And not a fun one. But in the season finale, the guy taking them for a joyride isn't one of Silver's goons, it's Mike. And he's just looking for some payback because he feels like Daniel was the one who burned down the furniture store and ruined his life. Chosen tries to start talking to Mike. Johnny, though, who's very inebriated, starts trying to fight Mike, but eventually Daniel gets in the middle of it. Mike just doesn't know what to do. He had everything invested in that store, and now he's lost it all, including his family. And Daniel explains that it wasn't him who did this, it was Silver, because Silver's made all of their lives a living hell. Mike starts screaming that he wants to do this thing tonight, go to Silver's house and beat him up. And Daniel tries to talk him out of it, but the issue is Chosen and Johnny are on Mike's side. They also want to go to Silver's and make him pay. So Daniel ends up getting outvoted. And instead of dragging Daniel along, Mike, Chosen, and Johnny hop back in the limo and leave Daniel there. With nowhere else to turn, Daniel has to call Amanda and explain that he was left on the side of the road. He doesn't even know where he is, but he needs a ride. But as Amanda is trying to process all this, somebody pulls up to her house, and she tells Daniel, somebody's here, and they're from Cobra Kai. Daniel's cell service is so bad, though, that his phone cuts out. So now he's frantically trying to get home. He finds a bunch of guys on the side of the road, and he tries to get them to give him a ride, but they're more interested in mugging Daniel. Luckily, though, the person from Cobra Kai was just Stingray in his Cobra Kai car. And he didn't show up at the LaRussa household to do anything bad. He showed up there to help out. So Amanda hops in the car, and they pull up on Daniel just as he's about to fight these guys. And the reason that Stingray is helping out is because he received a mass text message to all the Cobra Kai kids that some Miyagi-Do kids were in the dojo and they were setting up an ambush. So instead of heading to Terry Silver's place to help out Johnny, they head to the dojo to help out the kids. And Johnny, Chosen, and Mike could use the help. Mike's the only sober one, and he gets knocked out pretty quickly. Johnny and Chosen are putting up a really good fight, but they're doing so against a bunch of Kim senseis. Terry Silver is watching all of this from his security camera footage. He's not concerned at all, even when Chosen comes and finds him. And a drunk Chosen finally gets his opportunity to kick Terry Silver's ass and make him beg for mercy. He does a pretty good job, and he definitely doesn't panic when Silver grabs one of his katanas. The fight actually leads the two outside near the pool. Silver armed with his katana, and Chosen with sais that he just had on him, because you always come strapped. Silver cuts Chosen up pretty good, but Chosen is able to scoop Silver, and he's got him dead to rights. Silver doesn't beg for mercy. He begs to die, saying, "I was born to die on the battlefield." Chosen, though, doesn't get the opportunity. He hears Johnny cry out, and when he looks over, Silver grabs the katana and slices up Chosen's back. Chosen's left in the pool, bleeding out. And Johnny cried out because he's getting his ass beat. The four senseis that are left are really teeing off on Johnny. Silver starts criticizing Johnny and the group for attacking him on his own turf, bragging about the fact that he never stood a chance. But then he says, if it's any consolation, at least he won't be around to screw up another kid. He then doesn't finish Johnny off. He tells the senseis to do it for him. Silver then leaves to go meet Kim, who headed to the dojo to deal with the intruders. That grown woman has no problem beating on some children. Kim's senseis, though, are not able to finish Johnny off. He's getting beat up once again, but then the sonogram photo comes out and he gets motivation. He harnesses all of that dad strength and starts teeing off on him. And the last one is actually taken out by Mike, who has come to at this point and helps Johnny out. Now, I've been alluding to it all episode, but the Miyagi-Do kids headed over to Cobra Kai to try to steal the surveillance footage that Silver had on hand from the old dojo, proving what he did to Stingray. They're able to get in pretty easily, and Dimitri starts going to work on trying to get the file. The issue is that Stingray file is corrupted. They're not going to be able to use it. And Tori points out that they might be able to use the footage from when her and Silver were talking about the situation. So Dimitri grabs it and he starts trying to download it, but it's going to take some time. By this point, Silver has noticed what the kids are doing on his security camera footage, and maybe it was he who alerted his students to the fact that they had intruders. Because while Miguel, Hawk, Dimitri, Robbie, Sam, and Tori worked on the file, Anthony, Bert, and a slew of others were standing guard. But one of those was Mitch, who's been kind of hiding in the background, but he wasn't treated too well at Miyagi-Do. They gave him nicknames he didn't like, and he just got transfixed by the flashiness of Cobra Kai. So he ends up crossing over, and it was he who alerted everybody in that group text to what was happening. But the Miyagi-Do kids aren't the only people who feel betrayed. So does Devin, who is shocked to see Tori working with the enemy. And Tori tries to explain that she's not the enemy. She's just not buying Silver's BS. It doesn't matter. An all-out brawl starts. And the Miyagi-Do kids are completely outnumbered. Dimitri's been able to get the file, but he has to upload it to the official Cobra Kai YouTube page. That's going to take even more time. But he also knows it's time he doesn't have. He's going to have to upload this thing mobily because he can't just sit at the desk. And as he's trying to get out of there, Kyler and a bunch of others walk in. And Kyler right away starts making fun of Eli. It's going to be 3 versus 2, but Hawk doesn't really care. He's looking for revenge. And he beats the crap out of Kyler and the 2 others. Dimitri even gets in on the action because he's been wanting a piece of Kyler for a while. The good news is that video is uploading to YouTube. So with Kyler and his group down, that's when Hawk and Eli run down the steps and let Miguel and the rest of Miyagi-Do know that they've got the footage, it's uploading. But Kyler comes out from the back, knocks Eli over, and the tablet that is being used to upload the video goes flying. Anthony grabs it. And that's when the Miyagi-Do kids start enacting Protect the Egg. Kim, though, does not care about the egg whatsoever. She really wants to go at Tori. Sam comes to help out, but it's still a little too much for the girls. And that's when Devin joins in on the fight, but siding with the Miyagi-Do kids. She looks at Sam and tells her, "Go, save your brother. We've got this." And her and Tori once again team up, just like they did in practice a couple of days ago. And Anthony could absolutely use the help. The Cobra Kai kids just outnumber the Miyagi-Do kids by a lot, and they're converging in on Anthony pretty quickly. The good news is help has arrived. Stingray, Daniel, Amanda, they show up, and Amanda wants to call the cops, but the Cobra Kai kids outside let her know, "Go ahead. Your kids broke into our dojo." And Amanda realizes the cops aren't going to be an option. Stingray, though, isn't here to talk. Turns out the guy actually does have some karate skills, because he beats the crap out of all of the Cobra Kai students standing outside. And when the parents finally get into the dojo, they see just what a bad situation their kids are in. At this point, Amanda doesn't care. She's ready to call the cops. But she doesn't need to, because the video goes live and everybody gets distracted when it goes up on the television screens. Everybody sees what Silver did. The Cobra Kai kids finally see what the Miyagi-Do kids like Tori and Robbie were talking about. But as soon as the video ends, you hear Silver say, "That was your big plan?" Because Terry Silver entering the dojo went completely unnoticed. Everybody was watching the television. He starts ripping Daniel apart for this being his big plan. And Tori says it wasn't his plan. It was our plan. Terry tries to rally the Cobra Kai kids just like before, but this time, he's got nobody backing him. He tries to justify his actions, but still, nobody's with him. He then turns his attention once again to Daniel, challenging him to a fight. But unlike last time, Daniel has the support of pretty much everybody in the dojo. Him and Terry start throwing down, and Daniel enacts the Quicksilver method to defeat Terry. As Terry is laying on the ground, battered, bruised, embarrassed, the Cobra Kai kids walk by and just start throwing their Cobra Kai gear in his face. They're done. A little while later, the cops arrive. The cops get a revised statement from Stingray, who this time tells the truth, and it causes Terry Silver to be arrested and thrown in jail. Robbie walks up to Kenny to try to talk to him, but Kenny's still in shock. He tells Robbie, "Look, man, not right now." And he walks off, trying to process the fact that he was wrong. Robbie then goes up to Tori and says, "Yeah, I owe you an apology." And she says, "I owe you one too. But I'm not in the mood for that, so let's make out." And they do, and it's great. They aren't the only couple to get back together. Sam finally is able to bring up to Miguel the octopus necklace. Miguel even uses the L word, love. And how can you say no to love? Sam ends up taking Miguel back. Miguel ends up taking Sam back. They're together as well. As the teenagers are rekindling their relationship, Mike, Johnny, and Chosen show up. Chosen's really banged up, and as soon as Daniel sees him, he says, "We got to get you to a hospital." and he calls over an EMT to check on Chosen. All isn't lost for Mike Barnes either. He decided to take a parting gift from Terry Silver's place. A really expensive painting that he's going to use to sell and then maybe rebuild his furniture store. But it's not all good news. An off-handed comment by Daniel about John Kreese has all the cops turn their heads. Because that day, John Kreese staged his murder. He pretended to break up a fight in prison and he ended up getting stabbed. At least so everybody thought. When he got the EMTs alone, that's when he jumped up and took them all out. He put on a doctor's uniform and walked right out of the prison. And John Kreese is now on the loose. And that is the end to Cobra Kai Season 5. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing to the channel and maybe becoming a member. Hit thumbs up if you like this. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. I have a Patreon link. You can become a member of that as well. You get stuff. I have shirts. You can buy stuff. And I have a comment section that I'm going to ask you be nice in. But let me know what you think of this season and what you expect for next season.